Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie.
Funding for Chautauqua Sunrise is provided in part by the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency, with offices in Jamestown and Dunkirk, helping businesses to prosper throughout Chautauqua County. For more information on how the CCIDA can assist your business, visit choosechq.com.
From supporting people with disabilities to enjoy great lives, to providing health care services that are available to anyone, the Resource Center has been improving our county for more than 60 years. Learn more about how the Resource Center makes a positive difference in people's lives.
Is getting vaccinated on your to-do list? We can help you check it off, because we make getting vaccinated easy. You've got this, because we've got you. To learn more, visit yougotthis.usaging.org.
From the Access Chautauqua Studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Chautauqua. We are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week from 9 to 10 a.m. Send events via email or call us live. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. And now, from the Access Chautauqua Studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
Good morning, everybody. You got your pontoon boats out? Or pontoon airplanes or pontoon canoes? Wow. We had almost a drought last year, and this year it's making up for it. But what are you going to do? So good morning, wherever you are in the world. And as you know, here at Chautauqua Sunrise, I'm Doc Hamels, and I'll be hosting once again a show. I was just telling my guests, this is our 561st show, Justin. You're getting old. Crazy good. Yeah, we're closing in on our finishing up 11 years of programming, so we're really proud of what we've been doing here. Good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Say good afternoon to Natalia in Ukraine, James perhaps in Kenya. Karen, I know, is going to be visiting you here real soon. I've been following her notes on Facebook. Karen Cockrum, she goes down there and does a lot of good volunteer work and missionary work. So if you're watching, we hope you're well and safe. All right. Throughout the show, you may call us. And you can call us at 716-753-5225. And there's the number right there, in case you forget. And throughout the week, if you have an announcement or you want to share something, you can send it to us by just getting on there on your computer, your phone, whatever, Chautauqua Sunrise at gmail.com. You can call us throughout the show today if you have a question or a comment for me or my guest, or if you have an announcement like last week. Linda Spalding came in person, but she calls in from time to time. Other people call in from time to time, and just let us know what's going on in your community. Happy to do it. Or, as you know, you can email it, and then we'll announce it later on by our notes here. Okay? I want to say good afternoon to my listeners on WRFA 107.9, Low Power to the People, Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. Thanks for checking in with us. I say this every week, but it's true. We have a very sobering show today. We're going to be casting another light onto the topic of what I call the silent killer, and it's suicide, especially in the rural community. And I know we have two cities in Chautauqua County, but the rest of the county is very rural, and in some cases it's very isolated. And we're going to shed a light on it once again. And I was telling my guest earlier, there's certain programs and concepts that affect Chautauqua County, and you might say, oh, they're going to talk about that again. Yeah, we are. Until it goes away, we're going to keep talking about some of these things. So stay tuned. This is going to be a very interesting show because we're going to be talking about a perspective on the ag community that you haven't heard before, okay, and how mental health affects those in this particular community. So stay tuned. I think you're going to find this fascinating and at the same time, as I said, sobering. But on a lighter note, with the warmer weather, even though it's awfully soggy out there, the good news is I don't have to cut grass. No, but the other good news is that Jeff Zook was bringing up to me that the major migration of birds just came through this last week, and I've seen maps popping up, and that's really a lot of fun. So here's my list of birds that just showed up in the last week or two: goldfinches, Baltimore orioles, rose-breasted grosbeaks. They're one of my number one favorite ones. The bluebirds and hummingbirds. It's one of those things where you're out working and all of a sudden you're looking around and you go, that's not a bee, that's a hummingbird, and they're back. And of course, we now have Canadian geese visiting us on our pond. There's a married couple. They come in every morning and they pull out my water irises. I think they think it's celery. I'm not sure what's going on. But I was concerned that the irises were going to overtake the pond. We now have a natural balance in nature. So I say this all the time, Chautauqua County is just a wonderful place to live, and we got so much going on, especially from a natural point of view. And gosh, just get outside and just stand still for a couple minutes and just listen. There's a little warbler that comes around our bushes, and I can't even imitate it. It's just this real high-pitched, sweet sound, and they're just kind of in the bushes. They never really show themselves, but it's a little yellow warbler. And I just love seeing them and hearing them. So anyways, got some announcements to share with you, but the first one is I want to remind you, and Jeff, you can pop up that poster we talked about for the Kentucky Derby watch party. There it is. Wow. I look up and there it is magically. Thank you. Today, 5:30 over at the Mayville VFW, okay? The proceeds are going to go to the Dwyer Chautauqua Peer-to-Peer Veteran Support Project. We talk about them quite often, and it's a wonderful project, a wonderful program, keeping veterans in touch with each other and support each other, because they're another group that if we get too isolated, sometimes not good things happen. So we want to make sure our veterans are safe as well. And so what's going on? They're having a great dinner, and if I got this right, Margot Stewart is the chef. I got insider track on that, and I reminded from last week, if you didn't see Linda, she had her great big old Kentucky Derby hat on, and she had her horse winner here. They're going to have a buffet, $20. Where can you go today for $20 and get a high-end buffet? They have, what do they call those, mint juleps? I don't drink anymore. I did in college, not anymore. I think she said $5, Justin, something like that. They have a 50-50 raffle, then they're going to have a $25 prize for the best derby hat. So I'm not sure what makes a good hat, but I've seen some of them on TV and they're pretty crazy wild, and it's just a fun time. So if you want to get out today and get out of a bluesy evening, go over to the VFW just down the road here on 394 to the Mayville VFW for the Kentucky Derby watch party. I don't even know who's a favorite horse today, so I just pick a number. Okay, so let's do some announcements here, and we'll get to my guest who's waiting in the wings here. Okay, speaking of the Dwyer Group, I get announcements every week. And Cindy Reedy once said to me, "Are you sure you want to get on my list?" And I go, "Yeah." Well, now I know what she means. She tells me things that, like every other day, there's something going on for veterans. And if you're not hooked into this group, make sure you contact your veterans advocates for the county here in Chautauqua County, Greg Carlson and Mike Rao. They'll hook you up with the Dwyer Group by email. And I'm telling you, they're busy. So, but this is announcements for Memorial Day things. So let me just see if I can get this right. On Memorial day, week, 5/17, whatever that is. I guess that's a Saturday. Yep, at 10:30, there's going to be a dedication of Revolutionary veterans at Blackville Cemetery at 10:30. Then on the 22nd, at 4:30, you've got cemetery flag decorating at Lakeview Cemetery in Jamestown. On the 23rd at 5, Veterans Park flag decorating 3rd Street, Jamestown. On the 24th at 10 a.m., the Gold Star parents. We've had them here before. Memorial Day service hosted by the Blue Star Mothers on West 3rd Street. On the 26th, 9 o'clock, VFW service at Veterans Park at West 3rd Street, Jamestown. At 10 a.m., Jamestown Parade begins 4th and Washington Street. Okay, so that's on the 26th at 10, Jamestown Parade for Memorial Day, excuse me. I always get chastised because I get the two mixed up. At 11 o'clock, there's a Memorial Day service at the Lakeview Cemetery at the Soldiers Circle. Then on the 31st itself, 11 a.m., dedication of the Vietnam plaque at Veterans Park, West 3rd Street, hosted by the Blue Star Mothers. Okay, if you know of any other events that take place for Memorial Day, give Cindy a note on that, and it's Reidyc, Reidyc at chqgov. That's all one word, chqgov.com. Okay? And she'll get that information out to the other veterans in the area. All right? So let's keep everybody in the circle here. All right, we got some other things going on. Let's go to the next slide, Jeff. Bemis is blooming. All right, not that one. Bemis. So this is slide 15. That's all I know. Maybe we don't have a slide. Oh, there it is. Bemis is blooming, May 3rd to the 4th. So that would be today and tomorrow. Join them for a village-wide open house and spring kickoff this weekend as many of the local businesses reopen for the season. Enjoy delicious food and drink specials at the restaurants and shop new spring merchandise at their local stores. Okay? And then there's other things going on. I practiced this word. Let's see how I do. Spring ephemeral. Wildflower tours at Panama Rocks. We're going to have Jonathan Weston. Yeah. He's going to be in here on our show sometime in the next couple months, so we're going to be talking about Panama Rocks. So May 3rd today at 11:30 a.m., tomorrow 2 p.m., next week 11:30 a.m. on the 10th, May 11th at 2 p.m. So they're hosting this wildflower tour, and let's see. These tours are included with your admission, no additional fee, but they are weather dependent. Yeah. So anyways, it's also opening weekend this weekend for Panama Rocks. I just got that breaking news. And if you haven't been to Panama Rocks, good gosh, it is phenomenal. I love going there. And in fact, they're on my list to take some friends this summer to go there. It's just really, really cool. And so with the wildflowers there, you can identify some things and just get out and get some exercise. It's a great place. All right, let's go ahead into slide 16. This kind of ties in with what we're going to be talking about today. All right, this is a long one, but I'll do my best. All right, here we go. County to recognize Mental Health Awareness Month. All right, in recognition of the importance of mental health for individuals of all ages, Chautauqua County Executive Paul M. Wendell, we know him as PJ, has issued official proclamations declaring May as Mental Health Awareness Month, May 4th through the 10th at Children's Mental Health Acceptance Week, and May 8th as Wear Green Day in Chautauqua County. So it's like two St. Patrick's Day in the same year. The proclamations will be made during the Children's Single Point of Access meeting, which is not open to the public. However, the messages of acceptance, awareness, and action will be celebrated community-wide throughout a series of initiatives and activities throughout May. Each May Mental Health Awareness Month provides an opportunity to raise awareness, reduce stigma, and encourage conversations about mental health and wellness. This year's theme, Small Steps, Big Impact, emphasizes how everyday actions, big or small, can make a lasting difference in building a supportive and inclusive community. We're going to be drilling down into that very concept today. To help residents, schools, and organizations get involved, the 2025 Mental Health Awareness Month Toolkit is now available. The toolkit includes ready-to-use resources such as social media graphics, educator tips, a calendar of activities, and information about the Mental Health Rocks CHQ campaign, an easy and fun way to spread positivity and encouragement throughout the community. The toolkit also features information on the 2025 art contest, which invites students and community members to creatively express their reflections on mental health. Art contest entries will be accepted through May 23. Woo! Additionally, Chautauqua County will celebrate Spirit Week during the Children's Mental Health Acceptance Week coming up this week. Each day will feature themed activities and opportunities to promote kindness, acceptance, and mental health awareness, culminating in Wear Green Day on May 8th, when residents are encouraged, of course, as I've already noted, to wear green. Through these proclamations and activities, they affirm their commitment to promoting mental health for all community members, especially our children and youth, according to PJ. It says, together we can create a community where everyone feels supported, understood, and empowered to take small steps that make a big impact. Okay? So for more information, you can contact the Department of Mental Hygiene at the county. Okay, so lots of focus on mental health here in the county this month, and we're going to be talking, as I said, more about that in a minute. So let's go on to the next slide, and our final one for today. It's raining. Maybe you want to take in a movie, or you just want to get out of the house. Here's some movies that you might want to check out. Wednesday, May 7th at 7 o'clock to 8:50. The Penguin Lessons. I never heard that one. Have you, Justin? No. Inspired by this true story of a disillusioned Englishman who went to work in a school in Argentina in 1976. Expecting an easy ride, Tom discovers a divided nation in a class of unteachable students. However, after he rescues a penguin from oil-slicked beach, his life is turned upside down. Sounds kind of interesting. It's rated PG-13, 110 minutes long. Again, May 7th. All right, then on May 9th, The Friend. This goes from 7 p.m. to 9:30. Based on the best-selling novel, writer and teacher Iris Naomi Watts, its teacher's name is Iris, played by Naomi Watts, finds her comfortable, solitary New York life thrown into disarray after her closest friend and mentor, oh my gosh, think about this one, Bill Murray, bequeaths her his beloved 150-pound Great Dane. This is going to be a fun movie, I think. The regal yet intractable beast named Apollo, sounds about right, immediately creates practical problems for Iris. From furniture destruction, imagine that, to eviction notices, as well as more existential ones. Yet, as Iris finds herself unexpectedly bonding with Apollo, she begins to come to terms with her past and her own creative inner life in the story of healing, love, and friendship. It's rated R. It's 123 minutes long. And tickets are generally about $8, and you can give them a call at the box office at 716-484-7070. So check it out. It sounds like a couple of really fun movies this week, especially if it's supposed to be drizzling. All right, we're going to take a little breather. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
This is the moment I knew. His future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Okay, I'm back. I was taking a little nap there. Recently, my Rotary Club held something called a Rural Urban Day. They've been doing it for a long time. Helen and Steve Barron started this quite a few years ago, and she would shoot me if I told you how many years ago, but it's been a few years. And many of you may or may not realize, but Rotary is a real integral part of our communities and everyday life, especially here in Chautauqua County. I've been a Rotarian for 20 plus years now, and they do really good work. Rural Urban Days always focuses on some topic that brings together the agriculture community with everyday businesses, students, and so forth. And this year was no different than any other year. we brought together students from, I think, 3 different school districts. We had farmers and folks that are involved in the grape industry, milk industry, and so forth, to get together and talk about an issue that, to my knowledge, was the first time we ever talked about it at Rural Urban Day. And it was my fault that the guest speaker was on the docket, because I said, you gotta get Jeff Winton to talk. And he came to our Rotary Club. Everybody just sat there with their mouths open after they heard what he had to say, and they said, absolutely, he needs to be the speaker. In fact, they even changed the day that they were going to have it so they could make sure that Jeff was going to be available. So welcome back to the show, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. You're the founder of Rural Minds, and the work that you're doing is groundbreaking. I think the other day you said at our get-together that you're the only organization in the world that's a not-for-profit that's dealing with mental health in the ag community. Did I phrase that pretty close?
Yeah, the only addition to that, I would say, Doc, is it's not only the agricultural community, but it's the rural community in general. So,
right.
You know, here in Chautauqua County, and as a farmer, I always equate rural with agriculture.
Yeah.
But you get in a lot of other parts of rural America where you have the fishing industry, the mining industry, the forestry industry.
Right.
It's a much more heterogeneous community than what most people think.
Right.
But we are the only nonprofit focused on rural America. And while most of our work is done here in the U.S., we are starting to do some work internationally. I've been invited to a meeting in October in Germany.
Where in Germany?
I'm not sure, actually.
Well, let me know, because we got basically family in Germany.
Okay, well, we were just invited last week, and all I know, it's in Germany in October, and I'm thinking, Oktoberfest, that's perfect, right? So, but last year we were invited to a meeting in Lisbon.
Oh, nice.
And what was very interesting is having conversations with other mental health advocates from around the world. There were people from South Korea, from Japan, from the United Arab Emirates. And in most of those countries, they're not really focused on rural areas either. And after having met me and heard our story, which is a relatively new story, about what we're doing to address what's happening to the 46 million people in rural America, in the case of mental health, they said, you know, we've got rural areas in the Netherlands, we've got rural areas in Sweden. We need to be taking a page out of your playbook and doing more for the people that are raising our food and fiber in our country.
Now stop me, but you've only been doing this, 3 years?
3.5 years.
And now you've gone international.
Well, and it's a result of the fact that there's such a need, and it's growing, unfortunately. And as you said, the Rotary at your Rural Urban Day had never really talked about this before.
That's in my knowledge.
And we're finding this with a lot of longstanding organizations that we're now interacting with, who are part of the fabric of rural America, like the Grange, and we've talked about the Grange at a previous show. But people are now realizing that we're in an epidemic situation. And we need to be talking about this because mental illness and substance use disorder is so highly stigmatized. The only way we're going to tackle that stigma is to talk openly and publicly about this. It's a very uncomfortable topic. No one wants to talk about suicide.
Right.
No one wants to talk about schizophrenia. But on the other hand, we talk openly about diabetes.
Right.
If we're living with cancer, we talk about that. And so we need to get beyond the embarrassment of mental illness and start treating it as a disease, which it is. That's why it's called mental illness.
You know, you mentioned being in Europe. It's no secret. Barb and I, we've had a foreign exchange student back in '01, and we we've all adopted each other, and so the families that we visit with and they come to visit with us, we have stayed in touch all these years. I have cousins that watch the show, Cor in the Netherlands and Nick and his brother and sister over in Belgium. And where I'm going with this is when I sit down and talk with them after all the brouhaha, how are you, and catching up on news, we talk people to people. Yeah. And you know what? You could put any label above our heads of country, pull it off and put another one on, it's the same.
That's right.
It's the same.
Yep.
They're still dealing with all the things you just talked about. They deal with the influx of drugs into their country,
yeah.
of mental disorders, because it's universal. It's
yeah.
just not here in Chautauqua County. And people always say, oh, we got a horrible blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, it is horrible, but it's a shared horrible.
Yeah.
And I want people to remember that it's something we all need to look at, and it's just not our problem, and we need to talk about it. And you said that, people don't want to talk about mental illness and these things. People didn't want to talk about cancer.
Right.
They didn't want to say they had a heart condition. I mean, I remember growing up and saying, well, what's wrong with grandpa or grandma? Or, well, they don't feel well.
Right.
And we never said the big C word. Remember, we just called it the big C.
I remember.
Okay? Yeah. I mean, those are listening right now are probably shaking their head. That's right, we used to call it the big C. Now we say cancer,
Yeah.
because it's become destigmatized, I suppose, and other kinds of diseases. I mean, watch TV on any given night. Barb and I laugh about this. Every week or every 2 weeks, there's a new pharmaceutical that has lots of consonants in it, including Y's and Z's that I can't pronounce for some condition I've never heard of. And I'm not going to go into all that, but we're becoming more and more aware of that. Somebody's got something wrong with them, and there's this new drug for it or whatever, and that we have this idea that we all live in perfect health and things like that, and we really don't. And as we age, our body changes, and we need things, and there's a weight loss things, and you name it, they got it now, and so it's just a whole new world.
Yeah.
And so the other thing I wanted to actually ask you, at the Rural Urban Day, you had 50 people sitting there at in your hand. What was the feeling that you got from the students that were sitting there? I mean, we had students probably, I'm guessing like maybe 13 to 18 years old. I mean, they were kind of young, some of them.
Yeah.
And did you get a sense of, was there any connectivity with them, with you, or anything?
Yeah, I felt a definite connectivity to them, especially after having told my family story. And my nephew, who died by suicide, who was a farmer here in Chautauqua County, and the reason that we founded Rural Minds was a young person just like they were at one point. He was an FFA member.
Oh, yes.
And so...
And they were there in their jackets.
And they were there in their jackets, and in fact, I had one of the advisors from Sherman come up and said, I knew your nephew. He was a great guy,
gosh.
which was a real gift to me.
Yeah.
But this is impacting young people more than even adults right now in rural America. As a matter of fact, a statistic, and I think I shared it during your meeting, was that 54 young people in rural America are 54% more likely to die by suicide than their suburban and urban counterparts. 54% more likely. And I could see people nodding their heads when I said, I'm sure most of you have known someone who has struggled with mental illness or maybe has contemplated suicide or has died by suicide. And you could see some very respectful, gentle nods. The young people were taking it all in.
As you know, I was watching from the back on an angle.
Yep.
And nobody was on their phone. Nobody was looking down doodling.
Yep.
They were watching you
Yep.
the whole time.
Yep.
And I think all of those students either had some type of ag or conservation
Yep.
or some connection
Yep.
to the land
Yep.
that were there. They were there for a reason.
Yeah.
And it was a powerful day together.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was an honor for us to be asked. And those young people are the hope.
Yeah.
They are the ones who are more likely to talk about this than certainly my generation, because they talk about a lot of things that my generation, the baby boomers, will never talk freely about. And because of the prevalence in that segment of our rural society, they know it's an obligation they have to ensure that people know that they are a safe place to come and talk, and that they can in fact seek help if they need it. The one reason that we feel so strongly about having these conversations taking place is not only because we know it's going to tackle the stigma, but also because of the genetic predisposition of many mental illnesses and substance use disorder within families. Just like families have an incidence of diabetes or heart disease or cancer. Certainly my family has all of those. But we also have a genetic predisposition for depression and bipolar disorder. And so by having families feel comfortable talking about this, whether it's in the barn while they're doing chores at night or at the kitchen table when they're having noontime lunch, it's important to have these conversations so that the young people and future generations of those families can be vigilant and know that this is something that runs in the family. So we need to be on the lookout because it could happen to us.
You know, if you have this predisposition, you sort of have a weakened defense system. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And what I see a lot, and I see this in the news, I see this on Facebook, I see this wherever, the old thing about bullying.
Yeah.
And now we have cyberbullying, and people say, well, it's been around for a while. It's ratcheted up.
Mm-hmm.
And now with artificial intelligence, they can take your face, they can add it to some very unacceptable pictures they attach you to, and now they spread this with you out there, and gosh, kids are just demoralized, as would I. Mm-hmm. And so I think bullying and this cyber attacks really can be harmful to anybody, but imagine somebody that's living in rural America that's somewhat isolated, and your neighbors, I mean, I don't know where your neighbor is, I have a neighbor where I live, and I mean, you don't necessarily have somebody you can just run to their house and say, oh, this is really horrible, you know,
yeah.
You gotta wait to get to school, and when you get to school, everybody's, you know, so I mean, is bullying an issue that you guys see?
Yeah, bullying is an issue, but being the eternal optimist, the flip side of that is that sometimes social media is the only source of help.
Right, you can flip it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I like to look at it that way. Certainly bullying is occurring this day and age by social media, but I remember being a kid growing up in this area, going to school in this area, and I was the victim of bullying. You know, I was pretty good scholastically, but even though I was a farm kid, I wasn't very athletic. And I was bullied as well, and I still remember how hurtful and harmful that was. But when I left school and went back home, I could escape it. The problem is with social media, it's 24/7. You can't escape it.
Right.
You have to be intentional to stay away from it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a phone call, so let's take that right now. Okay, so let's take a breath. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Jack, and good morning, Jeff.
I know that voice.
This is Linda Spalding. and Jeff, I'm so glad you're on the show this morning. You're doing wonderful work. Everybody appreciates it so much. And it would be wonderful if people would start to accept that it's not a sign of immorality when your spirit breaks down. And you're doing wonderful work.
Yeah, well,
so thank you.
Well, thank you, Linda. I appreciate your continued support. And you're absolutely right, especially in rural areas like Chautauqua County. And I grew up on a farm again, so I know this. You're taught to be very independent. You're taught to be self-sufficient. You're taught to pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
That's right. Suck it up.
And get over it and not talk about your issues. And, you know, if you're living with cancer, you can't just wish it away. You need medical intervention. And the same pertains to mental illness and substance use disorder. We have to acknowledge that this is a bona fide illness And once people will admit and acknowledge that, there is plenty of help available. Now, granted, it's not always as readily available in rural areas like here, but with telemedicine and a number of the other tools we have now at our disposal, if someone does suffer and knows they need help, there are ways of getting them help. And we were talking about this before. We're very fortunate in Chautauqua County that we've got a lot of resources here. I travel around the country and speak and meet people in all parts of rural America. And I can tell you that what we have here in Chautauqua County on many levels is far superior than what you find in a lot of other more rural states.
I find that true also, Jeff. I worked for Chautauqua County government and for other public service entities, and I found that Chautauqua County was always the leader and the most progressive in New York State to provide services, and they were always innovative and ahead of times. So I agree with you. I have a question that's extraneous. You work with farm animals. Is there an amount of suicide in the animal kingdom, like you hear about dolphins committing suicide?
So, like, if there was a particular animal that would die, would the other ones like get depressed and that sort of thing? Like horses would get depressed. Do they get depressed?
Well, I'm not sure if they get depressed, but if a member of the herd goes away, and it may not even be by death, if the animal's sold or it becomes infirmed and it has to go to a hospital or whatever, animals are pack creatures. And so that absence does impact them. I don't necessarily know if animals contemplate suicide like people do. And one thing we're going to be talking about here today, and that's where I thought Linda's question was going, was about the people that care for the animals, veterinarians. We have a huge problem with veterinarians. But within the animal kingdom, Linda, and again, I'm a farmer. I have lots of cattle. I have lots of horses, dogs, cats, you name it. Now baby goats. Our farm manager has a number of new baby goats that are the cutest thing ever. Animals have feelings. I mean, animals have emotion. And they do sense when something is wrong and sense when a member of the pack is infirm, because when they were out in the wild, it was a matter of survival, because if there was an injured, ill, maybe even elderly animal that was a threat to the rest of them because of the predators were moving in, they had to decide, okay, are we going to leave our friend behind? Or are we going to stay behind and protect him or her? So it's a very interesting question, Linda, and I hope to be at your Kentucky Derby party tonight. So maybe
thank you for mentioning that. Thank you. I hope to see you. It's at 5:30 tonight at the VFW. $20 per person, and I think we've got too much food. I hope we make some money.
Well, if Margot's cooking, I'm sure you do have too much food. So.
We've got Margot and we've got Chef. Don't forget, Chef Jim Thomas.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Have a wonderful
day. Thanks for calling,
great
Linda.
weekend.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Well, and that's an interesting thing. Elephants go to their wherever. So I suppose in the wild there's probably something like that. I don't think domestically we see that too much.
Well, it's.
Hang on.
I think my
your mic is giving you trouble. Yep. There you go. You're good.
So I have seen, even with some of my own dogs over the years, and I think you may know, we've talked about this. We've bred show dogs for a number of years. That sometimes when they're ill and older, they will either wait until we're gone to die, or they will go away. And in our case, they'll go to a far corner of the farm and die, because I honestly believe they're trying to help us avoid going through that pain or having to make that decision. You're a dog lover.
Oh, yeah, my dogs,
One of the worst decisions you have to make as a pet owner, even though it's the ultimate sign of love, is if you're going to euthanize an ill or
some of the worst days
pet.
in my life were those days. I can think about it right now. I still get that knot in my throat.
Yep.
Jeff, you mentioned about predisposition, and I'm going to lead into what we wanted to talk about today. growing up as a kid, my parents always told me very openly, be careful. And now you say, about what? And alcoholism was a predisposition in our family. And my mom was pretty straightforward on it. My dad would just sort of nod his head in support, but it was true. I would look back in the genetics of our family, talk to other family members on both sides of the ocean, and alcoholism was a concern. And if it's not alcoholism, it could be drugs. Anything that is where you have this compulsive behavior or need for whatever, it doesn't have to be drinking, it could be marijuana, it could be, I'm not saying good or bad, I'm just saying when in excess or becomes an addiction or gets to be a problem for you, then it's a problem. You know, you can drink carefully, fine. If you want to use other things, fine, in a responsible way. But in our family, alcohol was a problem. And that's why I don't drink. You know, I got to the point where when I was probably in my 20s and 30s, people say, oh, don't you drink? And I just look at them and go, I'm an alcoholic. I mean, I had to do something dramatic to say, leave me alone, because I knew enough that if I started drinking, I probably would have not 2, but like 6, because I don't know why. Just genetically, I could feel that, so I have to be careful when I'm around those things.
Yeah. Well, it's not only genetically, but it's a chemical imbalance as well that, again, does tend to run in families. And, you know, good for your family for telling you.
And I told my
this.
kids the same thing, you know.
Yeah. And the one thing that many people don't realize is that the type of substance use can change from generation to generation. You know, our generation, it tended to be alcohol and maybe marijuana, but now it's opioids and many other things. And addiction is addiction, regardless what the substance is. And that predisposition from one generation to the next is something that has to be focused upon. And again, it's out of the individual's control. And that's why it's so important to look at these as illnesses as opposed to a character flaw. Because if you're born with this, there's little you can do to avoid the predisposition. There's plenty you can do to seek help or to avoid, like you did, falling into that trap. But if you don't know that this has been going on in your family for generations,
why didn't you tell me?
It's a very difficult thing to do.
Right. So let me frame the next section of our talk. At our house, we watch not network TV a lot, but we watch the History Channel, the whatever channel, National Geographic stuff, and we'll see Dr. Pol. Everybody knows who Dr. Pol is if you watch the veterinarian shows, and Dr. Jeff, and Dr. Oakley up in Alaska, and on and on and on. And we always see this bright and cheery people, but then every once in a while, there's a segment where they have to put an animal down. And we get quiet, they get quiet, and you can see the look on their faces. We can see the looks on the owners and the tears, and you were referencing putting our dogs down. I don't even go there. But then I think, well, how do they handle that? And we had a chat the other day, and I think I told you something that you didn't know. My one dog had a veterinarian who was absolutely wonderful, took her own life. And I'm not going to go into all that, but I knew of a veterinarian that died by suicide.
Yeah.
And I'm going to now stop and let you talk because I know you wanted to cover this topic today.
Yeah, well, thank you. The veterinary community is under great duress right now as it relates to suicide ideation and mental illness. And there's a number of factors for that. And it's something very important to us because they are a key component of the rural society.
Yeah.
We couldn't stay in business as dairy farmers here in Chautauqua County if it wasn't for our wonderful team of veterinarians. And the veterinary community is especially suffering right now because, first of all, there's a great shortage of veterinarians. As a matter of fact, in the next few years, almost a dozen new veterinary colleges are going to open across the United States because of the shortage.
Wow.
We're doing a lot of work with the College of Veterinary Medicine at Cornell University. They're a key partner of ours at Rural Minds, and I'm a proud grad, not of vet school, but I did my undergraduate work there. And so when we decided that this was a segment of rural America that we needed to start looking at and addressing, Cornell made sense. And the dean of the veterinary college, Dean Loren Warnick, wonderful guy. He's a cattle vet from Montana who has found his way to Cornell, and we're very fortunate to have him here, realized that he had an issue not only amongst the graduates that were going out to practice in rural areas and in more urban clinics as well, but also amongst the veterinary students. Because one thing that many people don't realize is that veterinary college tends to be longer than going to be an MD. And as a result of that, it then tends to be more expensive. I have a very close friend of mine who recently graduated from veterinary college with $250,000 worth of loans, $250,000 worth of college loans.
Holy cow.
That he said he'll probably never be able to pay back. Because, you know, veterinarians make a fraction of what medical doctors do, and they work very long hours.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, especially the ones that are large animal veterinarians, like the ones that come to our farm that care for our dairy cattle, because if you have a cow at 2 in the morning who's having a calf backwards or has some kind of an issue and you need help, you call the vet. And the vet will get up out of the comfort of their own bed, leave their family behind, jump in their truck, and come out and help you. And so veterinary medicine is a 24-hour-a-day proposition. And as a result, a lot of young people aren't going into large animal veterinarian. There are more young people that are interested in becoming dog and cat vets. Exotic vets are an area that's growing, avian vets. But being a large animal vet, and I'm sure some of your viewers and listeners will agree with this because they're coming from that background, is very difficult. And it's something that can really have an impact on people. The other component that we're very concerned about right now, Doc, in the veterinary community are the avian veterinarians, the bird vets, if you will, that are taking care of the flocks across this country living with bird flu.
Oh, wow.
I spoke at a meeting just about a year ago in St. Louis. It was the American Association of Avian Pathologists. So it's a fancy word for mainly bird vets.
Okay.
And after my talk, I had a number of vets lined up to talk to me, which
Holy
happens
mackerel.
quite often, who said, you know, we went to vet school to save animals. We didn't go to day after day euthanize animals. And they said, that's what we're doing because millions of birds have been euthanized. You know, we talk about the price of eggs, right? Everybody talks about the price of eggs. Well, part of the reason the price of eggs is so high is because we've lost so many poultry flocks in this country. And so the demand is outweighing the inventory
Right.
that we have to draw upon.
So if I was an avian veterinarian, I might be called in to come in and euthanize
The
thousands.
entire herd, because it goes through a herd like dominoes. A fraternity brother of mine from Cornell, up until recently, had one of the largest and oldest duck farms in the United States, and it happened to be out on the end of Long Island. It's been written up now in the New York Times, and it was on CBS this morning. That's how I found out. And his name is Doug. I saw this piece. I reached out to him immediately. Hadn't talked to him for a while. We've been out of school a few years.
Yeah, a couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, and he said his herd was fine one day, and the next day they had to euthanize the entire herd of ducks because it just went through the flock that quickly. So you can imagine if you're a veterinarian and your job is to protect the health of that herd, and all of a sudden they start going...
Totally opposed to why you went into the business, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And so that's why veterinarians have a 3 to 4 time greater incidence of suicide than the general population. they're 3 to 4 times more likely to die by suicide. And the medical profession overall, including dentists and doctors, by the way, they have a greater incidence of suicide, but veterinarians are twice as likely to die by suicide as medical doctors or as dentists. So we've got a real issue, not only in this country, worldwide. World Veterinary Day was just a couple weeks ago. And so Rural Minds did as much as we could to shine a light on that, working with a number of our partners. And one thing I would bring up to your viewers and listeners is that we launched a program with Cornell a year ago. And it's on our website, which is ruralminds.org.
We'll put a poster up for
Yep.
that.
And on our site is a free hour-long course that was originally designed for veterinary students and veterinarians. And the feedback we started to get from them is they said, this would be great for our clients as well, so that they understand what we go through. So if you go to our website, ruralminds.org, you will see a 1-hour online course that we developed with Cornell. And as I tell people, it's very rare that you get a free Ivy League education. So please go take advantage of it. There's a lot of helpful hints in there that go beyond just the veterinary community.
And the next is email? What is that?
The next is how you can reach us by email, info@ruralminds.org, and you see all of the social media icons down there, and it seems like every day we add something else, but we ask people to also follow us on our social media platforms. We have a bi-monthly newsletter. If you go to our website, you can sign up for that, and we don't send out a lot of spam mail, so please be assured that the information you'll receive, we hope, will be helpful. But this is something that is of particular interest and concern to us. Again, growing up on a farm, I remember my dad, who was a lifelong farmer, didn't like going to the medical doctor. He hated going to our primary care doctor.
It's not one of my high ends.
No, most people don't. But he loved our veterinarian. So if my dad was sick, if my dad had an injury, which most farmers get, he would wait until the veterinarian came to our farm and roll up his sleeve and say, "Hey, Doc Martin, I've got a huge gash on my arm. Can you sew that up?" Or, "I've had this persistent cough," because he trusted the veterinarian. And he knew that the veterinarian, even though the vet may say, you need to go to the hospital, right? Which many times is what happened. They are the eyes and ears of the agricultural community. They are on farms, and they are the trusted confidants of many farm families. And so it's so important that they be prepared for what to expect once they get out of vet school, once they start going to the dairy farms and the sheep farms and the horse farms and all the different forms of agriculture that they serve, that if they see someone who is struggling, and there are some obvious signs in many cases. So if a farm is normally very well maintained, the animals are clean, they're well fed, and all of a sudden it seems like things are going downhill. And there's a decline in the care that the animals or farm are getting. Many times there's a good likelihood that the person is struggling. So this course helps to identify some of those signs if people start to see them, and also help to know what to say and what not to say. If you see someone who's struggling, especially someone who you're concerned about that might be suicidal, one of the things we teach people, and this is part of work that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and NAMI and a lot of the other organizations have been promoting way before we were launched 3.5 years ago. But if you see someone you're worried about, you need to ask the question. You need to take a deep breath and ask your friend or your neighbor, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about dying by suicide? The first time you ask that, it's a very difficult thing to get the words out of your throat. But what it does is it puts the individual on notice. It goes to show them that you care, It goes to show them that you are paying attention to their welfare. And in many cases, it will make them stop and think, you know what, I have been thinking about this. I think I need some kind of help. And it will open the door to have further conversations and ultimately getting them the help that they deserve.
All right, I'm going to ask some difficult questions now.
Yeah.
How are you funded? How do you exist?
Well, we are, again, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so we rely on the kindness of individual and corporate donations. We work with healthcare companies who are involved in mental health. We work with agricultural companies who are selling tractors and buying milk and things of that nature, but a lot of our funding comes from the public, comes from individuals that realize that mental health is something that impacts all of us, and they see the need to help support the people that, again, are providing our food and fiber in this country.
Okay, and the reason why I ask is it appears to me that you're pretty independent.
Yeah.
In today's news, last week's news, the month before's news, agencies are getting trimmed, they're getting moved, they're getting abolished. I'm assuming the federal world doesn't affect you much?
Well, fortunately for us, we get no funding right now from the government. Now that might change eventually. You know, we haven't really been applying for government grants and things of that nature. The time will probably come if there's any government grants available. But the one piece that does concern us, and I think we have a slide, is there's a very important resource, the 988 number, the suicide hotline, that was launched 3 years ago. So anyone at any time in the United States, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, can call or text 988, and you will be connected with a live trained mental health professional who will stay on the phone with you for minutes, for hours, as long as you need that person to help you through a time of crisis. Or your family. It doesn't have to be the individual.
So this isn't just Chautauqua County?
No, this is nationwide.
All right, so who supports this?
Well, a lot of this is government government funding. So we're concerned with the cuts that are taking place in the government right now, that this lifeline is at jeopardy. And, you know, again, we're a nonpartisan organization, but we would ask people to please write your elected officials and ask them to maintain the funding for the 988 number.
What department or out of government is who comes out of?
It comes out of the HHS. It comes out of USDA. Contributes money, but by contacting any of our local or state or federal government officials and make your voice be known. I made calls last week saying, please, whatever you do, try to maintain this. It's only been in existence 3 years.
Jeff, I know this seems hard to believe, but we have a half a minute left. I want to thank you for coming on, but do a wrap up for everybody. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, so the bottom line is we're in a crisis situation as it relates to mental illness and suicide ideation, but there is help. There's lots of hope. There are many people like our organization who are fighting the good fight. Just please get comfortable with being uncomfortable and having these conversations. Go to our website, ruralminds.org, and remember 988, and be kind to each other.
And our county is having lots of programs available as well throughout the county.
Yes.
Okay, Jeff Winton, thank you for joining us again. And keep up the good fight as well in putting a light onto this topic. I mean, when you told me about the veterinarians, I just kind of looked at you with a glazed over look like, what are you talking about? So, gosh, don't
it's a lot.
Don't get down. Keep, call us and we'll prop you up,
Thank you.
I hope you found something important in this conversation. And as Jeff said, talk, Are you going to hurt yourself? Are you considering whatever? And if you don't, it might be you'll regret it tomorrow, right? So there's help out there. ruralminds.org, and check it out, folks. I'm on the mailing list. I get a monthly newsletter from your crew. So take care, everybody. Try to stay dry, and we'll see you again right here, Chautauqua Sunrise, next Saturday at 9 a.m. Take care. Bye-bye.